Now, as some of you may know, before The Last Jedi came out, 1 year ago today as a matter of fact, my channel was made up primarily of theory videos where I speculated about such things as who Rey's parents would be, or who Snoke was, or why Luke had sought out the first Jedi Temple. And though I got a lot of stuff wrong in those videos, ironically enough it was the very first theory video I ever did, which I boldly titled The Last Rey's Parents Video You Ever Need to Watch, that I correctly predicted that Rey's parents would not only be nobodies, but that they might even be deadbeats, which, if Kylo Ren in The Last Jedi is to be believed, was pretty much right on the nose considering they apparently sold her for drinking money. And no, I'm really not trying to brag or toot my own horn here because, again, I also got a lot of things wrong, nor am I trying to lament the past when my channel was all about Star Wars itself and not the controversy or anger and disappointment around one of the movies. Though, yeah, considering it's been a year, I would like to try to move past The Last Jedi, as some of you have been asking me to do for, well, the past year now. Instead, with this video, I want to be as candid as I can about the current state of Star Wars, at least from my point of view, and explain why I think things are destined to get better in the near future. Which, yeah, might be a very unpopular prediction with some people, just like how my prediction that Rey's parents would be nobody wasn't popular with a lot of people either, as you can see. But as I'll explain in a moment, there was a very logical reason why I came up with that theory, and a logical reason why I think Star Wars will now get better. And please don't get me wrong here, I certainly understand why some fans have completely given up hope after Disney has let some of their associates attack the naysayers of The Last Jedi, while they stood by and did and said nothing in their defense, even though they had legitimate complaints against the movie. I can understand and respect your decision to not accept any type of apology or effort to make things right that may be forthcoming, and to instead be done with Star Wars forever. If that is your stance, then that is your stance. I also understand and respect the position of those who enjoyed The Last Jedi and are happy with Disney Star Wars. You're not wrong for liking something, the same way others aren't wrong for not liking it. And by no means am I trying to attack fans of The Last Jedi when I critique that movie. Rather, with my videos, it's all about trying to help others see and understand why so many were disappointed with that movie, and that it has nothing to do with some of the ridiculous reasons that have been given, such as the haters are all sexist, for example. Anyway, getting back to my theory about Rey's parents, I can't even begin to tell you how many people were angry at me in the comments that I could suggest something so idiotic as Rey, our new main character, being related to nobody from either of the previous two trilogies, or at least connected to them in some way. And what many people didn't understand then, despite how tirelessly I tried to explain myself, is it wasn't what I wanted them to do with Rey. I didn't personally want her to be related to nobody. But the theory wasn't about what I wanted. It was about me removing myself from the story, if you will, or stop asking what would be best for it and instead asking, what kind of real-world message would a company like Disney and a woman like Kathleen Kennedy want to send with Rey? And the answer to that question seemed painfully obvious. They would want her to be a self-made hero, a hero that rose out of nothing all by herself, with little or no help from anyone else, one that was in no way overshadowed by a great lineage. They didn't want people to ever say of her that she's only powerful because she's a Skywalker, or maybe a lost granddaughter of Kenobi, or even a creation of Palpatine's. They wanted a hero that spoke to young women everywhere, and told them that no matter who you are or where you came from, you too can rise above and be a hero, that where you were is not as important as where you're going, that even the abandoned and forgotten from a backwater place can go on to be the greatest hero in the whole galaxy. Oh, and please beg your parents for Star Wars toys, young ladies, because it's predominantly been only boys who want those. And look, that's obviously not a bad message to send to anybody, and I'm talking about the part where we encourage young women from all walks of life to try and take the initiative, chase their dreams, and make something of their lives no matter what circumstances they currently find themselves in. Not the toy part necessarily, though they did create a line of Star Wars dolls just for girls, which you may not have seen or heard about because of how quickly it got cancelled. Anyway, on the surface, it sounds like Disney had the best of intentions with Rey, and their apparent desire to give girls a role model of sorts. And it makes sense coming from a company that tells us, when you wish upon a star, it doesn't matter who you are, your dreams can come true. It makes sense coming from a company that is geared mostly towards catering to the young, and young at heart. But much like I did with my Rey's parents video, let's now remove ourselves from that narrative and look at the reality of the situation. Disney is a corporation, owned by shareholders and no doubt managed by some of the savviest businessmen and women on the planet. After all, it's not the biggest name in the entertainment industry for no reason. And though on the outside is a brilliantly crafted, whimsical facade that they never want you to look past, one that seems to promote good, wholesome family entertainment brought to you by people who truly care, at the core is a money-making machine of nearly unrivaled success. And if you think for one moment they'll let Star Wars crash and burn, if you think they'll let their $4 billion investment fail before it's been milked for all it's worth, you clearly don't understand what motivates the mouse. Because I know a lot of people out there think that Lucasfilm is being run by social justice warriors, and a far left agenda is being pushed by them. And maybe they're right. Maybe if Mace Windu were here, he'd tell us he senses a plot to take over Star Wars, and that the dark side surrounds Kathleen Kennedy. Or maybe he'd tell us it's bigger still, that the larger entity known as Hollywood is trying to brainwash us all via the entertainment that a vast majority of the population consumes on a daily basis. Or maybe it's even bigger than that. And no, I'm not really trying to be facetious or anything of the sort here. I'm saying there is of course an agenda for Rey, but who really knows just how harmless or nefarious it might be? She could be anywhere from just a rather well-meaning character, meant to not so covertly lure in more female fans and encourage them to buy more merchandise, or she could be a piece of pure propaganda, meant to help bring about an ideological shift in our society, or maybe something in between those two extremes. The point is, there was a plan for Rey. Anyone who thinks otherwise is kidding themselves. Anyone who thinks they didn't want to accomplish something with her besides just being a character in a story is wrong. One way or another, they wanted her to become the next iconic character of Star Wars. And don't misunderstand me here. They wanted the same thing with all the new characters, no matter what their race and gender is. But Rey, of course, is the one they had the highest hopes for. The one they wanted to be able to set alongside the so-called legacy characters like Luke, Vader, Yoda, and so on. They wanted to be able to point at her and brag about this amazing, strong female character they'd created that, in the story, had created herself. But here's the problem. It didn't quite work out the way they hoped it would, because they misunderstood Star Wars fans and took them for granted, assumed a vast majority would like anything called Star Wars, and would blindly accept the new main character. And the truly funny or ironic part is that most fans would have been far more prone to blindly accept Rey if they'd just made her a Skywalker and made her a more intricate part of the larger story. But her being a Skywalker didn't fit the narrative they wanted to weave outside of the story, which begins to encapsulate the problem with the sequel trilogy thus far. It hasn't been about what's best for the story, and people aren't stupid. They can see that. They can feel it in the story itself even. You might not be able to put your finger on it exactly, but you can just tell a poor character when you see one, or you just find yourself indifferent towards them, or not caring about their fate. And if you don't care about the main character, or worse yet, you're rooting against them when they're supposed to be the hero, the story is a failure. And yes, I know some fans, maybe a lot of fans, love Rey, and that's completely fine. I'm not trying to tell you you're wrong. I'm just telling you a lot of people have a really hard time connecting with her. I'm telling you a lot of people don't see a natural character. They see a puppet on strings meant to play a part that goes beyond just being a character in a story. And no, it's not just men who want to hate on female characters. Plenty of women don't like the character either. And plenty of men love good female characters, even strong ones. Just look at Game of Thrones, for example. There are a ton of strong female characters in that show that nearly everybody loves. And at no point do you ever feel like the point of the show is to promote them. Hell, at no point do you feel like the show is meant to be anything but a good show. And guess what? It's one of the most popular and beloved shows in human history. Why? Because it just tells a great story and fills it with some of the most believable characters you'll ever come across. And it puts them in a setting that, though fantastic and magical, still manages to feel grounded and real to us, which, sounds a lot like the original Star Wars trilogy, doesn't it? In all honesty here, I do believe there will be a fundamental shift in the way Star Wars is being handled in the near future, because as Solo proved, people aren't just going to see anything with the name Star Wars on it. And maybe I feel that way because I try to be an optimistic person no matter the problems I face, which might be the reason why I hated Luke so much in The Last Jedi, because I feel as if there must always be some of us that never give up no matter what may transpire. In fact, without those who can be relentless in the face of incredible adversity, our society would have never gotten to the point where it is today. To the point where one of the bigger worries some of us have is the way a fictional franchise is being handled. And no, I'm not trying to sound like a smartass considering I'm one of those people who worries a great deal about the state of the Star Wars franchise, not just because of what it means to me, but because of how important art truly is to our society. And the reason I make videos like these from time to time, when all I really want to do is just talk some Star Wars, is because I believe it's important that entertainment always remains entertainment, that art remains art and it never just becomes covert propaganda for someone's ideological agenda, though by no means am I arguing they ever have been or could be mutually exclusive. In other words, there always has been and will be people who use art to try and push an agenda. But even if there is or was a grand agenda in place for Star Wars to begin to change our culture somehow, it won't matter if it doesn't sell. It won't matter if no one's watching it and if people continue to point out its flaws and call it for what it is, which is what's happening. And let's keep it real here. What the powers that be truly care about is money. And if Star Wars isn't making it for them, whatever plans someone or many someones may have had for it will be scrapped. And considering how the complaints levied against Lucasfilm and Star Wars are not being levied against Marvel and the MCU, at least not yet, I'd say Disney, who owns both companies, is not so much at the root of the problem as it is Lucasfilm and those who run the show there. And though you might point out that Disney just renewed Kennedy's contract for 3 more years, I'd ask, what do you think happens when those 3 years are up? Another contract extension? Or does Kennedy willingly decide to retire or move on to something else, thus allowing everyone to sort of save face and avoid any controversy that may have come from Kennedy being fired or let go by Disney? And in the meantime, you better believe Disney will be looking for, or already grooming, someone to take over her position, if they're not already running the show behind the scenes. Someone who can return Star Wars to juggernaut status, which I'd argue it's been slowly losing since it busted out of the gates with The Force Awakens. The only question then will be, how many will still be here when that happens, and how many will be willing to come back? Well, that's all I've got for you this time. And as usual, it's now your turn to tell me what you think. Is there a grand agenda for Star Wars? Or is it just all about selling Star Wars toys to girls? Whatever you think, leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.